Our guest tonight is Connie Gwinnett. Connie's here tonight to talk about multiple dogman encounters that she's had starting in the early 2000s. Connie, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Good evening.
For starters, Connie, could you give us a brief bio on yourself?
Well, I'm an old woman that lives out in the country. Let's see, in Iowa, to be exact. I just never thought I would see anything like this in Iowa, of all places, but I have. I'm newly widowed, and my son is kind of staying with me for right now. I don't know if I will end up moving or selling the place or what later on. I just haven't decided if I can maintain out here alone.
Well, I can understand. For the longest time, I've tried to follow the activity on your property. I know it all started out with Bigfoot activity and your interactions with them, but that transitioned over to including dogmen too in the early 2000s, from what I understand. Could you tell us about that first encounter that you had?
Well, I had been weaning a horse, a little colt, and I always stayed in the barn with them the first couple of days, so they would bond with me. This colt, I had separated his mom and put her and another couple other mares out back, and some of the geldings and stuff off behind the house, and I got the colt settled down, and I came in to get me something hot to drink, and I have front windows all across my house, and I was sitting there, and I'd left the lights on in the barn, and we have a yard light. I also have a porch light, which is actually 2 floodlights. I'm sitting there taking a sip of this cocoa, thinking about, well, I better get back out there, when I seen this thing run across the edge of the yard, probably 20 feet from the house, and it ran through the light and then back out into the dark. And I thought maybe I was losing it. It looked like something out of Greek mythology. And I got a pretty good look at it. It looked like a German Shepherd dog that stood up on its back legs, but the legs looked kind of weird. It walked on 2 legs, but it walked weird. I mean, to me, it just looked weird. But then, when it took off, it ran on all 4s, down on all 4s, then up on 2 feet, then down on all 4s, and up on 2 feet. Bounced back and forth when it took off into the dark. I just couldn't get over it, because it just looked like a dog, but when it ran like that, it looked like that animal that ran like that on Ghostbusters. I don't know, I think it was some kind of demon or something. But anyway, that was my first sighting of it. His hair wasn't real long. It was, only probably 2 or 3 inches long. But it wasn't real thick. It was real sparse. Kind of like he had the mange, actually. I don't know, he just, he had the pointed snout and the ears that stood up. It looked just like a German Shepherd. But the thing I noticed was his front paws or arms or whatever you want to call them, they hung down past his waist, similar to what a Bigfoot does. I mean, they have the long arms that go down close to their knees. This is what this looked like, the front legs. But it did have paws. It didn't have hands or feet. It had big old paws. I thought to myself at the time, man, that thing must be cold, because it was cool out. It was in late September. I thought, well, I better get out there. It was headed towards the barn when it took off into the dark. So I set my cocoa down and took off, and I ran outside. And as I was running past the horse trailer. Something hit it and pushed the horse trailer up on two wheels. I just kind of pushed off. I was running fast, and I just kind of used the horse trailer and pushed myself off of that, and then on into the barn. I had another 15, 20 feet to go before the barn, and all the horses outside, the females were behind the barn. They were just, I call it screaming when the horses whinny really loud, and anyway, they were really making horrible screaming loud noises, both sets of horses. And I get in there, and the little colt was pretty upset, so I'm trying to calm him down. But before I did that, I flipped on a light that I have on the back of the barn. It's a stadium light, and it takes a little while to light up, but it lights up maybe 5-10 acres out back, and you can see. So I just holding the little colt, and about that time, something hits the side of the barn, and there's wood and splinters and stuff flying all over, and I just stuck my face down in the little colt's neck and held his head down, and then I started praying, and I commanded it in the name of Jesus Christ to leave, because I knew if it was a demon, it had to leave then. And anyway, it would just hit the barn and broke that big, it was probably 3.5 feet by maybe 5 foot hole in the side of the barn. It was really kind of scary there. And then all of a sudden, it just disappeared. And the other horses all settled down, and I got the little colt calmed down and kind of peeked out the big hole in the side of the barn and put I think I put a gate or something up next to it. And that was my first encounter that scared the crap out of me. And I told my husband, I said, boy, I think I seen something out of Greek mythology. He says, what did you see? And I said, well, I seen this, I said it was a dog, like a German Shepherd dog, but it walked upright. And it was really strong because it tried pushing the horse trailer over on me. And he said, it's just hard to tell what you run into out here. He said he had seen some strange things during his lifetime, but he never told anyone about them. Earlier in the week, the dogs were barking and carrying on a lot at night. And then all of a sudden they would just get all quiet and scratch and really want to try to get in the house like they're going to tear down the doors. Earlier in the week, we had went for a walk down by the creek, and we had found this coyote. And it was a pretty large coyote to boot, and it was laying there, and Dennis was looking at it, and I wasn't really paying attention to the dead coyote, but Dennis says, hey, come here and look, this coyote don't have no blood. I said, what? And he says, come here and look at that. And he took that knife, his pocket knife, and poked that dead coyote, and it didn't bleed. He said, you see any marks on it anywhere? And we stood there for quite a while, trying to look this dead coyote over to see if we'd find any marks or what had killed it. Because it was just laying there, just dead. And I said, look at those prints. And we started looking at the prints, and there was, let's see, I'm guessing. I have it wrote down somewhere. I think they was like, the prints itself, we laid the cigarette package beside the print, and when we ended up measuring the package, it was like, the print was like 8 3/4 long and 8 wide, and it was in this moist sand on the bank, but it wasn't in the soupy sand. It was just the sand was moist. The print was probably 2.5, maybe even a hair more, inches deep. I'm no runt, and I wasn't even making a dent in the, you could just see the shoe prints, the top of my shoes. I didn't hardly sit down at all. We were just really amazed, and then Dennis, he was measuring between the prints, and the claws were so big. Ooh, that's the thing that impressed me. I showed the picture to one of the local DNR after that, and he said it was a timber wolf. Those were timber wolf prints. I'm not sure if it was the prints from what I seen or if it was the prints from a timber wolf. I've seen some pretty good sized timber wolves, but none with a foot that big. So I don't know.
Yeah, timber wolves don't get footprints that are 8 inches by 8 inches. That's pretty ludicrous if that's what he was trying to say.
Well, yeah, that's, so I just didn't think any more about it, but then when I seen that, it just, and I went and got on nerve pills. I thought I was losing it. And I kept telling Dennis, I said, I know I seen that with my own 2 eyes. I said, it's what put the hole in the barn. And he went out and looked around the barn, tried to see if he could find any hair or anything, because Jan Carter had taught us how to look for hair and stuff like that with the Sasquatch. Anyway, we never had any more problems there for a while. But that was my first encounter. I just couldn't get over, people talk about them having feet and hands like people, but this one had paws, just big paws.
That sounds like one heck of a first encounter to have with these things. You know, I've got some questions here that I wanted to ask you about that first encounter. First of all, though, I wanted to let you know it's not uncommon for eyewitnesses to report seeing dogmen that look like a German Shepherd that's standing up on its back legs. It's got that German Shepherd-looking head. That's right. That's a pretty common phenomenon there. But I wanted to ask you, Connie, you said that when it moved about on 2 legs, you said that it looked strange. What was it about the way that it moved when it was up on 2 legs that looked so weird?
The legs just didn't look like, they looked like they were put on backwards or something to me. I don't know, like a goat's leg or a horse's leg or something. It just, I don't know, it just didn't look like a normal dog's leg. The knee part, I guess that's what you would call it. That wasn't right. It just looked strange. And I was trying to take it all in and think about it. And when I got out in the barn and after things had settled down and I'd got the colt to settle down, I had drew a picture. Now I suppose now I can't find it. Anyway, I'm no artist at all. Only thing I can draw is flies mainly. And this thing, it had dog feet, paw feet.
Did it have hocks, just like a dog or a horse would?
Is that what you would call that? Hocks. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's a very commonly reported feature on these things.
Yeah, it just didn't look right. I don't know. It just was weird.
That's pretty common. The whole its legs didn't look right thing, that's something that you hear all the time from people that see them.
He had a mangy body. That's what I thought he had. He had a mangy, tannish-colored, dark tan-colored body. He had a body like a man's, only it was stretched out like a third more than a man's, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I follow you.
Between the steps, the different steps that we had found, feet prints out there, they were 36 inches apart.
It must have been walking at that time.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, I'm just trying to read my notes. I've added some notes that I'd talked to Bart Nunley and he had helped me figure out what it was. I showed him the prints. I was just scared to tell anybody because, it's bad enough to see Bigfoot and admit to it. But to see a dog man too, they really think you're wacky then.
Yeah, don't feel bad about that. There are a lot of people in the Bigfoot camp that, for some reason, look at people that are dogman eyewitnesses as being strange or maybe even a little off base. I never will understand that one, but that's how it is, unfortunately.
I've seen a few similarities. To me, their front limbs were longer like the Bigfoots are. Their arms, or whatever you want to call that part, the front ones, the upper ones. But they sure can go up and down real fast from 2 to 4.
That night when you had that encounter, did you find any dead animals the next day? Farm animals?
Not up around the house, I don't think. You always find, well, we had dogs and stuff, so there's things that you just know you just can't always, you think it might be one thing, but then you're not for sure.
Yeah, you see something really strange like that, it's hard to know what to make of it other than trying to get away from it the best you can.
As soon as it left, the horses settled right down, but when it was around, the dogs just darn near tore the front door off the house trying to get in. I mean, they were digging and really trying to, it was weird how they were definitely scared. And I've seen them go hide or get out of sight from a Bigfoot, but never try to tear the door down.
Well, I can't say I'll blame them. The way canine-type dogmen, like the one that you saw that one night, interact with dogs and vice versa is so strange on some occasions that have been reported by what I consider to be very credible eyewitnesses. It would seem like there wasn't all that much fear on the part of the dogs. The dogs were quiet, but they didn't seem to be terrified or anything. And it seems like all that the dogman wanted to do was look at the dogs, and that's about it. But then on other occasions, like what you're talking about, you also hear about situations where the dogs are clearly terrified, and they obviously want to get away any way they can. So that's just another thing to add to the whole hard-to-figure-out pile when it comes to dogmen. Now, having said all that, Connie, I wanted to ask you, you said as you were running past that horse trailer, you saw it come up to the other side of the trailer and try to push it over on you?
It was running towards the trailer as I was running towards the trailer. I was just almost there, and it was probably twice as far away than I was, and it hit it about the time I was even with it. Got even with the trailer, and it come up on, it was a 4-horse trailer, and it come up on 2 wheels.
Wow.
And like I said, I was running, and I just pushed myself off the trailer as it was tipping over and kind of give me an extra push to get on in towards the barn.
Yeah, that's not easy to do at all. That took a lot of strength.
But then I never seen it after that. And I never seen it break the hole in the side of the barn. I turned on the stadium light, I grabbed the little horse, trying to calm him down, and I did not see it. I was inside the barn. And the horses outside were carrying on really bad. And then the next thing I knew, something hit the barn and broke that great big hole in the side of the barn.
You were in the barn. You didn't see it knock the hole in the wall of the barn, but you were in the barn when this happened.
Right. All right. I was about 5 foot from the wall of the barn that it hit.
Oh, wow.
I grabbed a hold of the colt to calm him down, and I was hugging him and had him held close to me, and about that time, when it hit, there were splinters and pieces of wood flying all over. Then it was like it just disappeared. It was off and gone. The horses outside quieted down, nothing more. I'm not sure what he come up to close to the house for, unless it was the little horse. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, it looked pretty rough. It looked like it had the mange or, or something, because it looked like it should have had more hair than it did. The hair was long, like 2 or 3 inches long, but it was real sparse. It just, I don't know, kind of like just 2 or 3 hairs, maybe in an inch area. And the reason I thought of mange was because I had seen a fox earlier that year that had the mange, and I thought, well, that must be going on around, in the animal kingdom, but, because it is contagious, I think.
Let me ask you this. How tall was that dog man that you saw the first time?
Not over 6 foot tall.
A smaller one. Okay. Thank goodness.
And other than that, he just looked like a dog, other than the weird leg, the knees, or whatever you call them, hocks.
Yeah, those hocks that stick out backwards.
Yeah, that stick out backwards. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Boy, you got it down, Pat. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, I've talked to more people that have seen them than I care to recount, so by now that's kind of old school for me. Moving on, Connie, you've got so many encounters that you've had. I want to make sure that we cover them all. Tell us about the second encounter you had.
Oh, that was I think it was in July. The old man and I had gotten an argument. It was on a Saturday afternoon, actually. And I jumped in the Jeep to run down to the creek and pout. I was busy being mad and irritable and feeling sorry for myself. And anyway, I'm sitting down there, and pretty soon here comes the old man, and he gets in the car, and we sit and talk. As we're talking, I see this dog coming down the hill from across the creek. It was a pretty large-sized dog, and it looked like a collie. Anyway, and I'm talking to him and watching this, and it crosses the creek and walks away. It's probably a quarter of a mile up to where the car is parked. I seen it, and it had real long hair, like 4 or 5 inch long hair, and it was dark black, and it was matted. The hair was matted in places. But what got me was the head of it. It was on all fours, but it stood as tall as the top of the window, because I had my window down. All of a sudden, it just stuck its face in there and licked me on the side of the face. And I went, ah! And I turned around to ask the husband if he had seen it, and I turned back to look, and it was gone.
Now, I know there are who knows how many people sitting at home listening to this story, and I know the question that they're dying, they just want me to ask more than any other question. When it was up next to that window there, did you try to roll that window up before it had a chance to stick its head in and lick you, or what happened there?
No. It just looked like an animal. It was an animal. You don't have to be scared of animals. No, the window was wide open. It was warm. It was in July, and I didn't have the air on, and I didn't try to close the window. I was just amazed at it, because it was like it was, when I was watching it, it was like it was looking up at me and telling me to stay calm, or you have nothing to worry about. Does that make sense? That's just how I felt, like I didn't have anything to worry about.
I've heard that before, so no, that's not an isolated incident. Just like in Bigfoot encounters, sometimes with Bigfoot encounters, the same goes for these things, where people do report that they got these strange feelings, almost as if the dogman was trying to communicate with them. So, no, that's not that strange.
This was just the feeling that I got, that I didn't have nothing to be fearful of as I was watching it come towards me. But it was like it wanted me to know that it was there. The old man said that he wasn't paying attention. He had seen something coming across the creek, but he wasn't paying attention. He had been watching something out on the other side of the car or something that he was interested in as we was talking, so that was that. He never went into a whole lot of detail of what he saw. And I told him I said, it licked me. And then I turned around to look at it and it disappeared. And he says, well, maybe you'll have either good luck or maybe you'll end up with rabies. I never had good luck or I never had rabies, so both things were wrong.
Well, you could have had worse luck than that if that thing stuck its head in the window. I think that's important to note that if it had its head in the window of the Jeep like that, it could have done whatever it wanted to you.
Oh, I'm sure it could have, but I don't know. I didn't feel threatened in the least little bit. But you explain to me, where did it go? Because 1 minute was there, the next minute was gone. That's the thing that I don't believe in. Poof, you're gone, you know?
Uh-huh.
There's got to be some explanation for that. That really messed with me. Because that tongue that licked me on the face was real tongue.
I wonder if it didn't hide around behind the back of your Jeep when you weren't looking, or if there were woods it could duck into when you looked away.
I just don't know. But I hadn't had my head turned I just turned around to Dennis and I said, "Do you see that?" And he had his head turned the other way, so he had to look at me and he said, "No, what?" "Oh, never mind." So that was that, but it was different.
Oh, I'd say that's pretty strange, but strange and dogman, those two words seem to go together pretty well. I want to move on to your third encounter, Connie, the one that you told me about that happened on your back deck.
Oh, well, that was a short encounter, but I had gotten up in the middle of the night to get me a drink, and at the side of the house, I keep a yard light, because it's next to the timber. Woods, I guess that people call it. We call it timber here. And I was getting a drink of water, and I'm running the water, and I heard off the deck, we have a ramp. And there's a section in that ramp, I can always tell when anybody's walking on there because it squeaks. And there's just one certain place. And time again, whenever little Sasquatch has tried to look in or something, I've heard that and I've seen him. But this was a shocker because it wasn't a little Sasquatch. It was a dog, a dog man, but his head looked like a chow's head, and he was kind of reddish, and he had the chow head, fuzzy, furry, chowy.
You know, from talking to you before about that encounter, Connie, you told me you made it clear that you thought that as if dogmen weren't strange enough on their own, you mentioned how you thought the fact that this one had a head that looked like a chow dog's head, how you thought that was so strange. There are a lot of dogmen that have been reported as being seen with heads that look like that. There's a picture on the internet that you can dig up called the On-Away photo. It's a photo
Let me write that down.
Yeah, it's called the On-Away photo. For any listeners that want to jot this down and research it too, I'll spell it for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. It's spelled O-N as in Nancy, A-W-A-Y. On-Away. It's the On-Away photo. And the history behind that photo, if I remember correctly, a family had pulled off the road late at night. I believe it was their son was in the back seat, and he was looking out the back window when they pulled away. Well, when he was watching out that back window as they were pulling away, he says that he saw this creature that was on two legs chasing after that vehicle. He snapped a picture, and when you do that search for the On-Away photo, the picture that you see with that two-legged creature with what looks like a creature with a chow's head, that's the picture I'm talking about.
Well, this one, its legs weren't like the first ones I seen plagues. Around the knees, hawks, is that what you call it? Yeah. They weren't like that. They were just straight up and down like human legs. And this chow one, it had hands and feet, not paws.
Well, that sounds like you're talking about what's called a type 3 dog man.
Well, I don't know what it is, but it seemed real nonchalant. It was right under, it wasn't that far from the house. It just walked down off the deck, and it had been up on the deck and walked down the ramp and right into the yard, underneath the yard light, and it knew that I was there because it looked back and looked at me, standing there in the window, looking at it.
It never showed any aggression towards you?
Nah.
Well, that's good then.
It seemed like it was a really nonchalant, just out checking around tonight.
Thank goodness that's all it was doing. Around your house, you said that you've been having to put up with these things scratching on your screens and doing other things like that, right?
Yeah, sometimes. Well, it was really bad back in July. My husband had passed away in April, mid-April. And my son was gone, and I was here by myself, and I had my daughter-in-law come and stay with me because I was experiencing some weird things. The first time I ever had an encounter with the horse trailer, I was scared to death. It makes you shake inside. I'm not used to being scared like that. This just makes you so ungodly nervous, and stomach tightens up, and just horrible feeling. Anyway, so my daughter-in-law, she came and stayed with me for a month till my son got home, and it was a long month because they would scratch at, this is what her and I were thinking, that they knew there was no males around. We were just the females, and we'd go see the livestock and stuff, during the day. But boy, as soon as it got dark, we shut the doors, pulled the blinds, and locked things up. That's just how it was, and that's what we did for the whole month. But you could sense when it was around, and you could just start shaking, and I don't know, or if it was scratching on the windows, and it was pretty creepy.
When all this was going on, did you ever see a dog man scratching on your screens?
Nope, I can't say I did. All I can tell you is that with that ungodly feeling is just like the feeling that I had when the one tried to push the horse trailer over on me. Or I get the same kind of feeling when I hear them screaming. That shaky in my stomach and jittery feeling and nervous, scared. I don't know, just something about something in their voice or something. I don't know. It just terrifies me. And I used to I was outside day and night. I always felt like with the Sasquatch, I knew they would back me up if I had any problems. They'd be there. But this thing is just, I don't know, it's unbelievable. To me, they like to make you fearful. Or they enjoy making you fearful, let's put it that way.
You're not the first person that's come to that conclusion because of the scary things they do. It seems like they do, more than anything else, just want to scare the life out of you.
I've never been too scared of too many things, and I don't know, it just causes, you can just feel the fear just whooshes all over you. That's the only way I know how to explain it. It's nasty.
I know you've got a lot of Sasquatch in the area still. Could you explain how these things and Bigfoot on your property seem to interact?
Well, they don't. It's just like it's an unwritten law that the Sasquatch, or the young ones, they don't go over in the area where the dogmen are. And I have been told by some people that the dogmen will kill little Sasquatch, and I've never seen this, I've never heard it. I know one time there was a heck of a fight with something going on out in the cornfield, tore down a whole lot of corn, heard a lot of weird screams and thuds and stuff, but I didn't go out there to investigate, so I don't know if it was two sass fighting or a dog man fighting or what it was. I just can tell you what I've seen. But you hear that howling, and Sasquatch, they can really howl and make some different screams, but this Wolfman howl, it's different. It just makes you have goosebumps from one end to the other. One of my friends had gotten me a bionic ear, and one night I was sitting outside playing with it, and I was trying to figure out how to hook a cassette tape to it so I could record. And about that time I heard one of those dogmen, and I threw that. it just startled me, and I threw it, and now I don't have a bionic ear anymore.
Oh, no. I can't blame you, though.
But since my son has come to stay with me, nothing seems to be bothering none of the livestock, except over on the next road, one of the farmers, he'd been finding a couple deer with their heads ripped off. But that's the only unusual thing that we've been finding around here lately.
Do you see these things in the wintertime also?
No. You can hear them sometimes, but you never see them. I never have, anyhow. I just don't talk to anybody about it. They all think I'm nuts anyway because I see Sasquatch. So I don't say too much about the dogmen. But there has been one other thing, but I'm not sure if it was a dogman or just an oddity. Well, I've seen a couple things in the last few years that I'm not sure what they are. Like the one I'm pretty sure is a dog man that looks like one of those dogs that lay by the pyramids. They got real pointy ears and a long, narrow snout. I seen one that looked like that, and then I just remembered about the light-colored one I seen. It looked more like a normal, I don't know if they have white wolves around here or not, but I seen one. I think that's what it was, but we live on these Indian burial grounds, and there's a lot of different stories and myths about spirit dogs and stuff like that. So I don't know if I just see this stuff. One granddaughter seen one of the dog men, but she won't talk about it. She just said it wasn't a Bigfoot, Grandma. It was scary.
You said that you do have Indian burial mounds close to where you live.
Yeah.
How close?
No, quarter of a mile.
Oh, wow. That's very close. No wonder you see so many dogmen in your area. For some reason, when Indian burial mounds are in the area, sightings of dogmen skyrocket.
Really?
That's right. It's a very common phenomenon. That's not to say that if you live close to an Indian burial mound that you're guaranteed to see dogmen. No, I'm not saying that. But if you live near an Indian burial mound or Indian burial mounds, plural, that just means that for some reason your chances of having a dogman encounter go up drastically.
It's really strange when most people come to my house and they can usually experience something a little strange. Anybody that comes that hangs around for very long. I don't know what they are. I just called it a dog man because it walked like a man and it was a dog, you know. There was a lot difference between the first one and the German Shepherd looking one and the Chow one, though, because the Chow one was just really kind of all laid back and happy-go-lucky. Seemed really at ease.
I'd be really interested to hear, Connie, once you've had a chance to look at that on-away photo, to hear how what you saw on the back deck that night compared to what you see in that on-away photo. That's something we're going to have to stay in touch on, so that when you get a chance to look at that picture, if you could please let me know what you think on how they compared. I'd love to know.
Well, hang on a minute. On-away photo. Okay, let's see what I can come up with here.
All right.
Oh.
I did a search with 3 words, Connie. If you type in on away, the word photo, and then the word dog man, the very first picture that pops up is the picture that I'm talking about.
Okay, I'll add dog man then. Okay. Okay, well, tell me what are they doing?
Well, in this picture, all you see is a view out the back window of what looks like maybe a minivan, and then you see this grayish-looking dog man that looks to be running after it.
Hang on a second. I think I see it.
All right.
Yeah, it does kind of have the body was skinnier. Maybe the head, the ear, yeah. It looked quite a bit like that, I guess.
You're saying that the one that you saw on the back deck had a skinnier body than the one that's in that on-away photo.
Yeah.
But the head was pretty similar then.
Pretty much the same.
Okay.
So, it looks like a chow.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Uh-huh. Definitely. It looks a lot like it. But it was just, I don't know. It was totally different from the other one, though. I wonder where these things come from. At first I thought they were demons. But then, when you start hearing other people seeing it, it makes you feel better. Like you're not crazy as all get out. But you still like to know where they came from. What are they? You know?
Oh, sure.
They're more elusive than the Bigfoot. They seem to be around here. 'Cause you can always catch a glimpse of a Bigfoot, you know, crossing the field or over by the creek or down by the river or something like that. Where you only see the dogmen at night. Too. That's why I've never seen one in the broad daylight.
That encounter that you had down by the creek with that collie-looking dog man, that was after dark?
No, that was in daylight.
Okay.
But that's why I wondered if it was a dog man or if it was a phantom dog, or, you know, 'cause it was black. And, well, also on our lower field is where Black Hawk had his last encampment before they decide to civilize him and send him on down the river. I think a lot of this spirits and stuff, residual, I don't know. You know, you watch all these ghost things, and I think maybe some of it has something to do with some of it, but I'm not sure. I can't tell you what a dog man is. If it is, I mean, it looks like a dog. I know the one that licked me felt like a dog's tongue when he licked me on the side of the face. But to see him walk like a guy, a man, a human, you wonder if somebody hadn't mixed with some DNA somewhere, you know, and mixed it all up.
It is really hard to figure, that's for sure. And as far as anyone being able to tell you what a dog man is, anyone that tries to tell you that they can tell you what a dog man is, Guaranteed liar, because no one's got the answers on that.
But it would be nice to know, but it's one of those mysteries that you're just going to have to hopefully live long enough till they find out what the outcome is.
I'd say so. Well, Connie, do you have any closing points you'd like to make?
I think dogmen are kind of dangerous, and I would be very aware and very fearful if one was around. I know I would be, and I don't know, I think you couldn't trust them very good. And if you're going to go out looking for one or something, I'd make sure you had a partner or something. But, yeah, they're just strange things that I can't really say what they are. I know we've seen them. They're out of the norm, that's for sure. That's for sure. And so, you just be careful in the night when you run across anything like that.
Connie, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all those great experiences with us.
Well, I had fun.
Don't be a stranger, okay?
Okay, okie dokie.
Have a great night.
Thank you, Vic.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Episode 21. Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host as we listen to eyewitness encounters involving one of the most terrifying cryptids, dogmen. I received an interesting email that is a little different in the fact that this eyewitness didn't actually see what was making the noise that she heard this particular night, that quite possibly could have been a dog man. But nonetheless, it's a very interesting story that I wanted to share with you. The story reads, and I quote, "Hi, I wasn't sure whether to report this to you or not, as it was so long ago, but I can promise you every word is true. I didn't see a dog man, but I'm convinced, having read articles from your website, that I definitely heard one. I was about 13 or 14 at the time, so it was back in 1981 or 82. The previous weekend, my friends and I had watched An American Werewolf in London on video for my birthday. Werewolves had always fascinated and frightened me, so I pestered my parents to let me watch that video for my birthday get-together with my friends. I remember it scaring me in parts, but the thing that got to me the most was the howling noise it made when in the underground tunnel just before it attacked the man on the escalator. A few weeks after watching the video, my friend and I were walking to the youth club at Clow Hall School in Kids Grove, which was just over a mile or so from our homes. If the weather was okay, we would always walk to the club and then our parents would pick us up. It was a very dry, clear night, very cold but no wind, etc. It would have been sometime around 6:30 p.m. We were busy talking, probably about boys or something, and we had just gotten to the part of the footpath where the houses had ended, and the road went over a disused railway line with a tunnel further up the track. The track is down below you at this point, by the way. I then heard a far-off but definite howl. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and I remember feeling very uncomfortable. I had stopped talking and was just listening for the noise again at this point. My friend was still talking. I asked her if she had heard anything, and she said, "Heard what?" I was convinced it was just my imagination and shrugged it off. We walked further and carried on talking. I heard the same howl again, but this time much closer. I looked at my friend and said, "Tell me you heard that." She had gone quiet. We looked at each other and she said, "Yes." We both stopped talking but carried on walking, albeit slightly quicker. I still remember how it made me feel. My heart was pounding, and I remember looking round but could see nothing. The footpath now had woods either side of it. It didn't sound like any dog I had ever heard, and it certainly wasn't a fox. It sounded exactly the same as the howling noise from the film. My friend said, "I think we should walk a bit faster." I said, "I think we better run," and we did. We ran as fast as we could, all the time hearing the howls, and they were getting closer each time we heard them. We sprinted the whole length of that path, which must have been a quarter of a mile, and I was terrified the whole time. We came to the end of the path, out to where it joined the main road. As we did, whatever it was howled again, and it sounded as though it was right behind us. We didn't stop running until we got to the youth club. Just thinking about it now still gives me the chills, and to this day I hate going out in the dark. I've never heard anything like it since, and to my knowledge, no one else has ever heard anything either. I really have no idea what it was, and I never saw anything, but my gut feeling tells me it could have been a dog man, even though there are none reported here in the UK. End of quote. I hate to break the bad news to you, but there are. Tonight's guest is Larry Parker. Larry is a Vietnam vet with 6 years' experience in the Navy, including 2 of those years spent with the Marine Recon Unit. Larry lives in northern Michigan and is an avid outdoorsman. One day while hunting with his best friend Dave, he had a chilling dogman encounter. He's here to share the details of that encounter with you tonight. Larry, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
I'm glad to be here, Vic.
Please give us a brief bio on yourself.
I was born in December of 1955. I'm not a young buck anymore. I'm closer to 60 than 50. Ex-military. I did 6 years in the United States Navy. Some of that was with the Marine Recon Unit. I've lived in northern Michigan for the past 24 years. And grew up in Michigan, lived in rural Michigan all my life, grew up on a lake. I'm a mechanic in the surf industry. I've been that for the last 23 years. And I work on all the specialty equipment that they use on golf courses.
Interesting. Please tell us about your experience in the woods, Larry. I know that you've spent a lot of time out there, but what did you do while you're out there?
Oh, when I'm out in the woods, I check for all kinds of different things. Normally, you listen for your crows, your blue jays, squirrels, birds. You look for tracks to see what type of animals are running through. I hunt morel mushrooms. I hunt big game here in Michigan. And, you just familiarize yourself with what natural woods are like. Areas where you find no wildlife, that's areas of concern.
Talking about the areas of no wildlife, it's not unusual for people that run into dogmen to report that they experienced a strange silence that fell over the woods. That's something that seems to almost always happen right before an encounter takes place.
Yes, it was the same thing with my encounter, and where we had the encounter at was an area we were setting up for hunting. We had ridden in and found this area. When I first started going back there to place bait, it always disturbed me because it was so silent.
Oh, I believe it. That's a very common phenomenon. It's hard to understand, but happens all the time. I know that your friend Dave, who was with you that day when you had your encounter, I know that Dave had some strange goings-on that happened at his property before you had this encounter. Please tell us about that.
Well, Dave and Trina were going shopping one evening, and they called up over at the farm, and Dave asked me if I could come over and watch his two girls. And, you know, to be honest, the girls were old enough to watch themselves. And I agreed to it and went over there, and Dave had his weapons out. He had a few pistols and some long guns, and he was just really nervous. And I said, Dave, I said, what, you got all the weapons out? He says, oh, just in case you need them. And he kind of just shrugged it off. And they left, and the oldest daughter, Britta, she said, you know, there's something coming around here. And I figured, oh, probably just coyote. Maybe they saw a wolf or something. I told her, I said, look, everything's fine. I said, I can use any one of these weapons. I said, you know how good I shoot? I said, you're all right. And Britta says, we just didn't want to be alone. So I could kind of understand that. Two young girls that don't really venture into the woods, that are living in the woods, and they're from suburban Detroit, and I could completely understand how they felt. So I didn't notice anything going on, didn't hear anything that night that I was there. It wasn't until actually a few weeks later on that everything came forward.
Please tell us about the area where this encounter took place. I know that it took place across the road from where Dave lives, but give us the layout of the land.
Well, it's mixed hardwoods and swamp. There's pine also, and we were, from Dave's house, we were in probably 2, maybe 2.5 miles back, right at the boundary of state-owned land and privately owned land. And we got permission from the landowner to use their property to hunt on. It was thick, dense, and then you get into areas where it was a little more open, but we kept skirting that swamp. So when we came across the game trails that we found, and it was kind of active recently, you know, I looked at the deer tracks on it and everything, and that's all I saw was deer. I figured, well, I said, Dave, I said, we can hunt here. I said, this is a good area. And then again, I noticed that there was no birds or anything when we were looking around the area, deciding what we were going to do there. And we went ahead and we built our ground blinds out of natural sticks and everything that were laying on the ground. And that whole time back in there, it was quiet. It was strange. You know, I'm game for adventure. I like going into different areas and hunt and testing my skills as a woodsman. But this was just strange. It was just the strangest place I'd ever been in. And it was mixed. You could see the swamp, and you were on the hardwoods and pines. You know, a beautiful area.
Sounds like it was a really pretty area. Pretty, but awfully creepy, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I would venture to say it's an area that I probably would not go back into.
Oh, I could definitely understand that, especially after what happened to you. Let's jump right into your encounter. Please tell us all about what happened.
Well, Dave and I were bow hunting in October, and we decided that rifle season was about a month away, and we wanted to go in deep enough to where we could actually get some sizable game that not too many people would have the nerve to trek back into, because most hunters only hunt within a half mile from their vehicle. Here in northern Michigan, opening day of rifle season, the Orange Army is just unreal. So we went and we scouted. We actually took horses and went in on horseback initially. And we found the area that we wanted to hunt. It was mixed woods and good game trail, like I said earlier. So we figured we'd need to find a two-track to come back into, and a two-track is like a little vehicle path that goes through the woods up here. We found a two-track and rode it out, and then rode back up the main highway back to his property. And at the time, I had a little 89 Toyota 4x4, and we put bags of apples and buckets of carrots in it, and we went back there and we scattered it in the area. We don't put a pile out there. We scatter the bait. As a hunter, I feel hunting off a pile is relatively unethical. And so I went back there and I maintained the area and kept bait in the area for them. And every time I went back in there, it was like I felt like I was being watched, like something was there. And I'd taken binoculars with me, and I'd look through my binoculars and try and see what's going on. And I'd get up into the bed of my pickup and look. There was nothing I could see. There were times where I thought I saw something move, but then I didn't see anything. And so that's how we got into that area. Something had been eating the bait, and I figured it was deer, or maybe even being on a swamp, possibly a bear coming in. That kind of a thing, I thought. And so, opening day of rifle season, we went back in there and hunted in the morning. And there wasn't much going on in the morning. I mean, not a blue jay, not a squirrel, not a crow, not a raven, nothing. And we went in the house and had our lunch, and we sat there and we discussed the area for a little bit. So that afternoon we went back out there into the new area. And Dave asked me prior to going back out there and prior to the morning hunt for me to bring a different kind of round with me, and it was a ballistic tip round. And I had backup clips for my 30-06. It was semi-automatic, 3x9 by 40 millimeter scope on it. Really nice gun. And, I'm thinking, well, sure, I'll bring it. I've hunted deer with these rounds. They're great. That afternoon, we went back out there, and it was about 4:30 in the evening. We got out there about 2, and I hadn't seen a thing. But I kept getting the feeling of being watched. I kept feeling a presence. And there were times where I thought I noticed movement in the area around me, and I looked where I thought I saw the movement, and was nothing there. Well, I brought a binocular with me, like a small telescope with a filter on the thing, and I used that to pick up deer and everything because of how well camouflaged the deer are. And I still saw nothing. So I'm sitting there, and Dave comes over the headset, and he's, Larry, we gotta go. We gotta get out of here. We gotta go now. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And he says, I want you to put those other rounds in. And I says, okay. And he says, I'm coming to your blind. So I stepped down a little bit. I put on the hunter orange vest for walking through the woods and everything. And I myself, I wear woodland camo when I hunt. That's my preference of hunting camouflage. Dave come up to the blind, and he says, are you ready to go? I says, not really. Why? He says, we got to get out of here now. So we started hoofing it, and we went a little ways. He says, did you put those rounds in? I said, no, not yet. We stopped, and I changed rounds. I ejected the current round out of the chamber, and I changed magazines and put one of the ballistic tip rounds in the chamber. And so Dave and I are getting ready to move, and I noticed Dave was staring, and I brought my 30-06 up. I'm looking to the scope, and this creature stepped out from behind a maple tree. And I'm like, what in the hell is this? And I'm kind of looking at it, and instinct went to draw down on its chest. And I started getting this feeling like I was being threatened. So I pulled the trigger, and I brought the rifle down, and the creature was still standing there. I know I hit the creature. I turn, Dave's gone. I bring the rifle back up, look through the scope again, and this thing was definitely in a threatenative posture. It made itself look like it was, it was huge. I would say height-wise, it was probably 7, maybe 7.5 feet in height. And I just instinctively pulled the trigger a second time. Only this time, I watched the bullet actually hit it in the chest. I saw a blood spray. Then I brought the rifle down, and I looked, and the creature was still standing there. Now, this creature was probably 200 yards away from me at this point, if not maybe a little further. And that's when I decided to hightail it, and it let out this freakish growl. Okay? And I made it back to Dave's house. It was dark when I got back there. Dave was in the house. He had the doors barricaded. He had stuff over the windows. And he had all of his weapons out. And it took me about 5 minutes to get Dave to let me in. At that point, I said, Dave, I says, what in God's name is going on? And Dave leveled with me. He said, this thing has been coming around the house for a couple weeks. He says, Larry, I set you up. He says, I know you shoot it. He says, I didn't have the gunpowder you got. And he said, what do you think it is? I said, I can tell you what it's not. I said, it's not a bear. I said, I don't know what it is. So we talked for a little bit, and I went out to my truck, and I left. About 2 in the morning, I get a phone call from Dave. He says, you got to come over here. He says, you're not going to believe what's happened. I said, oh, come on, man. It's 2 in the morning, Dave. He says, Larry, he says, I'm not pulling your leg or anything. He says, you got to get over here. He says, this thing came up. He says, and the horses they got attacked. He says, the lean-to was tore up. And he says, you've sewn up the horses before. He says, bring your suture kit. Because I've got one of these packs that I've got ready. If I got to get up and go, I can get up and go. And a suture kit's part of my first aid kit in this pack. So I get over there, and I look at the horses, and I couldn't believe what I saw. You could actually see 4 distinct claw marks in the hind haunches of one, and 3 distinct claw marks in the neck of another. And I know from experience in studying big cats that this was not an attack by a big cat. Maybe on one horse, seeing how it was up by the neck. But on the rear haunches of the other one, I doubt it, because a big cat comes down from a top and attacks from behind. And it goes around the neck, and it goes to bite through the neck and sever the spinal cord and bring the animal down. That's how they take down an animal. But on top of this, the lean-to that he and I had built was just ripped to shreds. And, I looked at Dave. I said, yeah, I can sew up your horses and that. I said, I can do that for you. I said, what has been going on? And they told me about it. Britta actually saw the thing looking in the window. And she said, Larry, it looked like a big wolf. She says, as a little girl, I remember the Little Red Riding story, she says, and seeing in the books. And she says, it looked like a big wolf. And I says, okay, that's interesting. And within a couple of weeks, actually it was a week, Dave and Trina had packed up everything they owned, moved to Tennessee, and put their house up for sale because of this. Now, even today, when you go back into where their house is, you still have that feeling you're being watched. And it's dead quiet. Like there's something there. And my wife and I went back there a little while ago, and we weren't even there 60 seconds. Didn't get out of the car or anything, and the wife says, we got to get out of here. I don't like it back here. She says, it feels creepy. She says, there's something watching us. Nobody was there. So we left right away. I wanted to actually get out and see if I could find any claw marks in the uprights from what was left of the lean-to. And I just find the whole thing very, very mystifying that it's probably still there. You know, and this has been, 17 years ago that this creature forced these people out of their house.
Wow, that had to be quite the encounter to try and get over. As far as Dave, Trina, and yourself would go, have there been lingering nightmare issues and PTSD issues you've been dealing with?
Oh, I've been diagnosed with PTSD for quite some time. It has to do with what I did in the military. The stuff I did in the military is highly classified. I went to Vietnam, the end of Vietnam, and when our presidents said we're not sending people in, they would send us in. And I'd never been allowed to reveal anything that I did. But that's where my PTSD came in. And, you know, it may be that my training and what I went through might be the reason I'm still alive.
You are not the average Dogman Encounter eyewitness. That goes without saying. If it had to happen to someone, I'm so glad that you did have the training that you obviously brought to the table. That's about the only good thing that can be said about that. Moving forward, what do you have to say about people that go out actively looking for dogmen, knowing now what you know about them?
This is a creature of unknown strength, unknown capabilities, unknown temperament, and they've got to leave it alone. They're messing with a hornet's nest is what they're doing.
Oh, I'd say they are. How good of a shot are you, Larry?
Let's put it this way. My record speaks for itself. And in the United States Navy, I experted out in marksmanship of both small arms and long rifles.
Wow, that's really impressive. I heard you say that you specifically hit it in the chest with the second shot that you fired, but with the first shot, is that where it hit as well?
That's where I was aiming at, was right dead in the chest. The type of round I use will disintegrate a Chevy engine block. And I had shot deer with it, and it makes a mess out of a deer when you shoot a deer with it. And I figured that round would be a down-and-out round, but it had no real effect on this creature. I mean, it apparently it just passed through it, is what I think. That's
a scary thought. When you were out there and Dave asked you to put the magazine with the ballistic tip ammunition into your .30-06, did that throw up some serious red flags, making you wonder what in the world was really going on, or what?
Yeah, there was some real serious flags that went up the minute he mentioned me bringing them. And he kind of blew it off to me as, well, look how dense it is out there. You might want to just take those. You know, you might see a deer in down deep in the swamp, and he says, those rounds will go through a tree. And he says, it'll take down a deer. He says, I've seen you do it. And so I figured, well, yeah. And then when he was in panic mode, as I put it, I mean, the man was as white as a sheet of paper. That's when I really got suspicious. And when he finally broke down and told me he was setting me up to take this creature down, I knew then that he had seen it, he had encountered it, and was terrified of it.
When you found out that he had set you up for this encounter because he didn't feel as if he was capable of handling this on his own, did that put a strain on your relationship after the fact?
Yeah, and I was kind of glad that they moved to Tennessee because, you know, it made me feel like he betrayed a trust. Had I known that he wanted really to try to hunt this thing down and go in there with high-powered rifles, that would have been a whole different story. I mean, I'd have used a different rifle that was a bigger caliber and harder punching. And it just kind of puzzled me on why he didn't want to be on the up and up with me about this.
Well, I can understand when you figure the reaction you would get from most people. I guess I can kind of understand why he didn't come out and tell you what the real reason was for him taking you back there, but still, that's obviously not the way to handle that. If he was going to put you in a situation like that, the least he could do would be to let you know what you were dealing with, so like you said, you could come equipped with a heavier caliber rifle with a proper type of ammunition to give both of you the best chance of walking out of there that day.
Yeah, that I wished he'd have done, but what I really wish I would have done was gone back into that area and looked for hair and blood. If I knew today what I knew then, I would have gone back to look for hair and blood. And I would have took the samples and I'd have kept it as contaminant free as possible. Because I want to know what this thing really is.
Well, it's probably fortunate, in my opinion, that you didn't know about DNA back then, because if you had gone back there, I can't see any situation where Dave would have been with you. If you would have gone back there alone to look for that evidence, there's a strong possibility that you wouldn't be here today, unfortunately.
Well, something like that, I'd have taken a couple of 40-round magazines in my SKS and would have installed the Hellfire trigger system on it. That way I would have had enough rounds to cut it in half.
One thing to keep in mind, too, Larry, is sometimes these things don't travel alone. They travel in packs. While you were out there and you saw that dog man, did you ever get the impression that it might not have been alone? It might have had company.
Yeah, I did, because when Dave was telling us we had to go, there was something around me. And what I've studied on wolf behavior is that before a wolf comes in on a kill, it circles its prey. Knowing that today, it makes sense that there were probably two of them. And what I think happened is when I shot the one, I think the other one might have gone to its aid. What went on that night from dark till I got over there at their house, I think it was more of an act of revenge. And I believe it was plain and simple a warning, okay, you've hurt one of us, we're going to maim or kill one of you.
Yeah, that could definitely be the case. They do seem to have a vengeance factor like no other, so I wouldn't be surprised if that did happen, if that's how it played out. That day when that encounter happened, Larry, was Dave so shook up that, in your opinion, he would have been unable to help you defend yourselves, or do you think he would have been able to help out firing at this dog man or these dog men if they would have attacked you that day in the woods?
Well, Dave had his 30-30 Winchester with him, and he did chamber around, and he wasn't an ex-cop, so I'm hoping he would have had my back. I think if he knew I was just out there by myself and there were more than one, that yes, he would have had my back on that. But, you know, the fact still remains that you're right. They travel in pairs or 3 or 4. You don't really know how many there are when you see one. You could see the one and there'd be 2 coming up on your back fixing to take your head off.
That is a scary thought, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very sobering thought. And today when I go out and in the spring we have morel mushrooms, come up. If I go out mushroom hunting, even today, I take a rifle with me. And it's just knowing what I know. And it's knowing the areas that I go in and the feelings I get. Recently, my wife and I went into an area, and I put it out on the internet. We had an encounter with something out there. I'm not quite sure what it was. And in one of the photographs, you could almost make out a creature kind of camouflaged by the shadows. So I know there's a lot up here. And this area that we went over by was by the Manistee River. And legend has it that it all began over by the Manistee River.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I know there's been no shortage of action with dogmen by the Manistee. It's unfortunate that you had to find out the hard way about their presence, though. Changing topics here, you mentioned that you already had lingering PTSD issues from your experience in the military, but have there been problems with nightmares and so on directly related to that encounter that you had as well?
I've had, I wouldn't really call them nightmares. I've had dreams that have woken me up and I've been in a sweat. But the one dream that I keep having that reoccurs is where it's looking in my bedroom window. That's the one and only dream that really reoccurs that bothers me. They did a sleep study on me because I was having problems sleeping, and they found out my brain don't shut down. And I think that's due to the reason of that encounter in the woods. You know, I think my subconscious has stayed on high alert for all these years.
How far do you live from where that encounter took place?
Oh, let me think here. I live about 9 miles from it.
9 miles. Understand, I'm not sure if you knew about this, but just in case you didn't, I want to bring something to your attention. There's a strange phenomenon where these things, it's not uncommon for them to follow eyewitnesses home, where someone will see one, and then normally before too much time has elapsed, they'll see that one or one like it around their home. Do you think that maybe that's kind of coming into play here, where it might have followed you home somehow?
Well, at the time that this happened, I own a 40-acre farm on Fife Lake Road. And ironically enough, that farm's about 2 miles from where I'm sitting right now. And nothing came up and really bothered my animals or chickens or anything. But I think part of the reason it didn't follow me to my home was the fact I was in a vehicle. And I believe that the traffic on this 131 is heavy enough that it covered my tracks and it couldn't scent me. That's kind of what I believe. There's no doubt in my mind that something followed us to Dave's house. I had that whole feeling that something was following when I was going through the woods back to his house. And when I left, I felt like there was something out there. But as to whether or not, you know, it wanted to bring revenge against, let's call myself the Trigger Man, or against Dave, I have a feeling that Dave might have done something prior to this that brought all of this on. But to this day, I don't know what that might have been.
I hope he didn't do anything foolish that might have brought that on. Speaking of Dave's house, Larry, you mentioned when you went back there with your wife to take a look around, within 60 seconds you got that strange feeling and everything. What's the history of that house or that property after that encounter, after Dave and Trina sold it and moved off? Do you know if anyone ever did wind up moving back into it, or did it just lay vacant?
Well, somebody had brought in a great big mobile home, and the day we were back there was nobody there. And I still don't really see any movement of track. From what I understand, the property is sold and resold multiple times.
Well, I can definitely understand why that happened.
I don't know. I haven't taken the time really to find out who bought it, track them down, and interview them to see if they had any occurrences back in there. And I think that's something I'm going to have to go to the county clerk and look up and find out and maybe make some phone calls.
After what happened that one day, I'd be astonished if anyone that moves into that property did not have problems. So that would just make sense that it would be hard for anyone to stay there for any period of time. Now, shifting gears a little bit, Larry, when Dave approached your blind that day when you were out there hunting, did he ever come clean on that and admit that maybe he had seen that dog man and that's why all of a sudden out of the blue he was in so much of a hurry to get out of there?
No, he just kept saying that there's something out here, there's something out here. And I don't know, I'd never really seen Dave terror struck until then. So I don't know what was all going on. Just like I said a little bit ago, I do need to know what he did. Because there might be a way to remedy it and to calm the area down again.
Well, I wouldn't count on that too much. I don't know of any instances where something like that's happened and anyone's been able to squash things to the point where an area was safe to go into again. For some period of time, I think that area is going to be an off-limits type of place.
Well, today, so many years later, that whole area has been cabled off with steel posts and a 1-inch steel cable blocking your way in there, and it's posted no trespassing. So somebody knows something's up and they know it's coming out of that area.
Well, that's good. I'm glad they've got it cordoned off like that. If they didn't do that, more than likely someone would get hurt if they ventured back into that area.
I think they would too, and it just brings me to realize something, that there was a Kalkaska County prosecutor found dead on a 2-track out there, and it wasn't too far from where this sighting and occurrence that we had happened, and his cause of death was heart attack, and I'm wondering if he had an encounter, and it terrified him so bad that he died.
I wouldn't be surprised. Everything that goes bump in the night is not dogman, of course, but given the history of that area, I wouldn't be surprised if unfortunately that did play out that way.
Yeah, it's within 15 miles of Sigma, which was another hot spot at one time. And it's almost like it's within the range. I believe these dogman creatures operate within a range. You know, like a bear or a big cat. A big cat, they claim, might have a 250-mile range that it roams, or a 100-mile range. That's what I think goes on with these dogman creatures, is they operate within a specified range.
Oh, sure. I think you're onto something there.
And something else that during the time that happened and now I've done is all the sightings here in Michigan, I've been plotting them on a Michigan map. And I'm noticing that it travels like a east, west, north, south range. But ironically enough, it's along major corridors, major highways, interstates, and there it would have ample food from roadkill and what have you, and it may all make sense to me that these areas are still wooded, it's got the food, they're probably still in that area.
Oh, I'm sure they are. Yeah, it's funny how they've got all that room to roam, but they stay so close to us. But like you said, we do offer so many sources of food for them, whether you're talking about the roadkill you just mentioned or people leaving out trash that's so easily accessible. It only makes sense that they would hang around us like they do.
Yes, and I've seen the photos of them in town. There's one that comes to mind where it was standing by a lamppost. And that was taken back in the 30s. And it was odd that that photo was shot the same year that a gentleman up in the UP shot a giant wolf. And I came across that photo and I put it out on the internet, this wolf. And I mean, granted, this one wolf gutted weighed 183 pounds. So if it was entirely intact, it'd be over 200-pound wolf. from tip to toe, standing upwards with 7 feet 11 inches in height, and the top of its head was 12 inches across. It makes me think that maybe people had seen that type of a wolf years ago, and when it went upright on its hind legs, surveying its prey, that some of the dogman sightings from the 30s and the 20s and prior to that may have been these big wolves.
You know, I've heard it postulated that a lot of these sightings that happen today are just cases of misidentification. Someone saw a timber wolf that stood up on its back legs, but I never have bought into that. I think it's just something just totally different from that. The creature that you saw that day, could there have been any way that it was a timber wolf that was standing up on its back legs, or was its morphology and dimensions different so that you know as a fact it could not have been a wolf?
No, there's no doubt in my mind that it was not a wolf. When I had my farm here in Fife Lake, I had 3 hybrids, and they were 75% Alaskan timber wolf. And there's no way it could have ever been a timber wolf or a big coyote. You know, I saw the hybrids I had, and the male topped out at 125 pounds, and I've seen him on his hind leg. And no, it wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a canine as we know it. This is something that's new. This is something that's completely different than anything I've ever experienced with wolves and things of that nature.
Like you just hit on, when a wolf stands up or a dog stands up, they obviously have a different build, totally different build, when you view them front on, for example, than a human would. Could you describe how what you saw that day looked when you were looking at it head on?
It was upright. Its front arms or legs were similar, but not totally like a man, you know, a human. The legs, you can see the definition of the human type thigh, but they narrowed down at the bottom of the leg where our ankle would be, and it didn't look like it was standing on an actual foot. It was a little bit different. That's the only way I can describe it.
So it looked like it had a stifle joint instead of a knee like a person would, the way a dog that's standing up on its back legs would, but it had much more impressive looking thighs than a dog would have. And then on the lower legs, it had hocks instead of a traditional flat-footed stance like a person, you're saying.
Right. That is what I'm saying is it looked like to me.
It's pretty unnerving, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because you look at the average dog and they can outrun a human. So my thought is, if this thing really wanted to kill me, it could have. It could have caught me at any time. But it didn't. So I'm believing that it wasn't really me it was intrigued with. I think it was Dave and his family.
You looked through the scope and saw the round hit its chest. Could you describe, we never did get into how its chest and shoulder structure looked compared to a wolf or a man. What did you see that day as far as that goes?
Okay, it was almost like a combination of the two types of chest. There was some protrusion, like on a canine, but yet it was flat, almost ape-like in nature. It had dense hair, and a lot of it. So, when I saw how much that it was real hairy, I said, no, this ain't no Bigfoot. No Bigfoot would do this. You know, that's what ran through my head. But it was a combination of humanoid canine chest.
How about its shoulders? As you know, when you look at a dog head on when it's up on its back legs, there are no shoulders. What did you see shoulder-wise?
Shoulder-wise, it was out a little rounded. You know, it was rounded out more than, it was almost bear-like when a bear stands upright.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, remember, too, the dogmen that are down in Kentucky, a lot of the people down there refer to them as bearillas because of how they look. So it's not like that would be unprecedented for a dog man to have a bearish type appearance. Are there any other points that I've missed, Larry, that you think are important to share before we close the show out?
The points I try to stress to everybody that I've talked to about encountering one of these creatures is not to go looking for it. Leave it alone. You go out there, if you have a can of mace or a knife or even a handgun or a rifle, don't try killing this thing, because all you're going to do is antagonize it. All right? On the fact that I believe that they're paranormal is the fact that they can take the round and they can keep on coming. And, you know, you're messing with something that you don't know. And if you're a kid or a young person or a young adult from the inner city and you want to go hunt a dog man, I'm going to tell you flat out, you have no business being in the woods. If you have no experience as a woodsman, if you don't know your tracks, you don't know your directions, or anything like that, stay out of the woods. Don't go looking for it. Because you're going to find something and you're not going to like what you find. Because you're going to end up terrorizing yourself. You're going to get twisted around in the woods. And even if it doesn't get you, you may not find your way out and something else will.
Sounds like really good words of wisdom. There's one last question I want to ask you, or at least it's something I want you to elaborate on because of your past in the military. You more so than almost anyone would be the best person to ask about this. We're talking about these people that are going out looking for something that they really don't know anything about, putting themselves in a very precarious position in the process. Could you explain the purpose of recon, the importance of good recon in the military, in a military situation, to the audience?
The purpose of good recon is having the knowledge of your enemy, knowing your enemy's movements, knowing where it's at, that type of thing. If you're going to try to hunt this creature, go into the area, take out 10 or 12 game cameras, and see if you can't come up with a strategic plan rather than just, okay, I'm grabbing my can of mace, I'm grabbing my gun, I'm going out there. No, you need to know what you're up against. You need to know what your odds are of survival. You know, there's just too many factors that are involved with hunting this type of a creature. You know, it'd be like almost trying to hunt a human that is out to kill you or you kill it. It's something that you don't know any of the variables about, and it's something you wouldn't try to do.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on, sharing the details of that encounter as well as all that wisdom. I really do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Vic. I know a lot of people out there probably have seen my posts on Facebook and that, and think maybe I might be somebody who's just blowing smoke about this. They need to realize I've had the experience. I'm not a young person. I'm closer to being a senior citizen than anything else. And that they have to use extreme caution. I can't stress that enough. Recon and extreme caution if you're going to attempt to hunt. But what I'd like to see is I'd like to see one of these creatures captured alive. And we'd be able to study it and learn more about it. I would love to be able to find a nesting area and be able to videotape what they do, how they move, what their habits are. I mean, there's just too many unknowns about the dogman.
Thanks again, Larry, so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, Vic, and I hope that a lot of people will take my words of caution on this creature.
Oh, I hope so, too. Don't be a stranger, okay?
I will not be a stranger. As a matter of fact, I'm working on getting some night vision, and this summer I'm going to go back out to that area by the NFC and see what I can see goes on in the nighttime.
Well, if you do that, I hope you watch your six closely.
Oh, I'm going to cover my six completely.
Good man. Well, thanks again, Larry, and have a great night.
You too, Vic.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.